everybody, and welcome to Our Greener Pastures. Oh my God, I can't believe this podcast is finally here. This podcast is very, very precious to me. It's very dear to my heart. I had so much fun recording it, and I just hope you have so much fun listening to it as well. So our first guest is Leke. Leke is a supply chain professional, and he relocated to Canada about 2 years ago with his wife and 8-month-old daughter. On the podcast, we talk about the obstacles Leke faced before he was able to make it to Canada because it was during COVID. He also shares the struggles he faced finding a job as well as finding a place to live in Canada. I just hope you enjoy listening to this podcast as much as I enjoyed making it. Grab a snack, grab a drink. If you're en route, if you are commuting, however you listen to your podcast, enjoy. And remember to share this with your friends as well. Thank you. Hi, Leke. Thank you for joining me today on the first episode of this podcast. As you know, I've discussed this with you. The premise of the podcast is basically just sharing your story from running away from Nigeria, Japarin. So I'm just going to allow you to introduce yourself because I don't want to miss anything out. So can you just tell us a little bit about yourself? How long ago did you leave Nigeria? Why? And all of that. Just a brief introduction.
Okay, thanks, Taylor. Thanks for having me. I feel honored to be on this podcast and just to share my little story. My name is Leke. I moved to Canada almost 2 years ago, April 2021. Moved with my wife and my daughter. My daughter was just coming up to 1 year when we moved, so like 9 months when we moved. We got to Canada April. We started working like not too long after. And then, just been settling in, trying to make a life for myself and my family. I left Nigeria because I think that's a long story that we will probably get into much later in the podcast. That's me, really.
All right, thank you for that introduction. But I don't think you did a good job introducing yourself, so I'll just help you. So, Leke is my friend. I say that very loosely. I've known him for quite some time. I'll say well over 10 years. And I know he moved to Canada about 2 years ago. And I think his story is actually very interesting. There are a few things for the listeners to learn from, because I know a lot of people are moving and there'll be a few things for people to learn from this episode. So I'm just going to jump into it and ask you some questions. So my first question to you would be, at what point did you decide it was time to leave Nigeria? Like, did an event happen? Like, did something happen that changed your mind? Like, at what point did you know I need to leave this place?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question because I think at different points, like, I came to the realization that, like, I don't know if I see a future for myself in Nigeria, and I don't know if I want to raise a family in Nigeria. And I say the first point was like when I left uni, like more than a decade ago. When I left, I just thought like I didn't see the opportunities there to grow in Nigeria, and it just seemed like the country wasn't, progressing as I thought it would. And then because I had traveled a bit before I even left uni, I'd seen like what the world outside had to offer. I was always reading books, watching TV shows, speaking to people. Thankfully, like when I was doing NYC, I'd work with people like that lived outside Nigeria. So, just all that exposure also made me see like there's more to the world, like there's more to life. There's just a lot out there to conquer, to experience, and to explore. So, I think after uni, I had the first realization, and then I did an MBA a few years after. And then, just moving to the UK, spending almost 2 years there, just living, work, schooling, speaking to different people from, different countries, different nationalities, listening to their experience. I just thought like Nigeria wouldn't give me that fulfillment because I've always been like, I want at the end of the journey in life to I had an interesting ride. So I just thought Nigeria wasn't, and then obviously with like seeing how much decay happened, just within like a year and a half that I was away, just like even with like exchange rate. Just thought like I don't see any metrics or indices that show like we're on the right track. And then when even before I got married, I had another realization, like I don't know if I want to raise a family in Nigeria. So like I would say it wasn't one event, it's just different points in my life. I just knew I wanted to see more. What was out there? What else was there for life to offer me? So yeah.
That's a very interesting perspective because I haven't really, like, from everybody I've spoken to that decided to leave Nigeria, it was always something that happened and they're like, no. I haven't really heard people say they were just hopeless right from the jump. That's very interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting to hear. I mean, for me, I would say it was NSAS because I've always been pro Nigeria. I'm such a Nigerian to the core. I've always been pro Nigeria. I mean, if you ask my friends, I was one of those people that always used to say, if you want to be a billionaire, it's only in Nigeria you can do that. Because obviously there are so many loopholes to explore and things like that. So it's very interesting to hear your perspective and point of view. So let's just talk more. So what country did you relocate to and what was your path?
Okay, so I ended up in Canada when I came as permanent resident. It was I would say it's slightly an easy a decision to make for me because so it was different countries like America obviously is one of your top choices when you're looking to leave Nigeria, but it's like
Mm,
if I go to America, I'm not going to get a passport. And I just thought like getting a different passport apart from Nigeria, it just goes back to my reason for leaving, like opportunities, seeing what's out there in the world. So America was out of it, and I wasn't really like, I didn't really want to move to America. The UK same because I'd gone to the UK quite a bit. I did my masters there. It didn't seem like a place I wanted to live. The other option was Australia. And I just thought that's too far away. Like
mm,
that's like God knows on the other end of the world. So Canada seemed like the logical choice. And then my friends had moved here earlier. I'd spoken to them quite a bit about like how is it, how's settling in, how's life there. It just seemed like I got good vibes from them, good energy, good information. Apart from like the cold, I just thought, well, the cold is one thing. Like if that's the one thing I have to battle, I'm fine with
yeah.
that.
If that's the
Yeah, so
only con you deal with the cold when you get there.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. I love that. I mean, I love that you said you did. I just want to know, like, with PR, like a lot of people, someone like me, I knew nothing about PR. To be fair, I wasn't even looking to move out of Nigeria. So just tell me that process. Like, where did you hear about Canadian PR? Like, what was the process for you, like, starting? There are lots of things to consider when you're doing your PR. There's the proof of funds you have to gather. Just give me that story. Like, how was that period like for you? I mean, before getting your, is it ITA you get where you submit your,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
so just give me this, like, what was the period like, planning, gathering all your documents, what was that like?
Yeah, so first time I heard of PR was when I was applying to go do a master's. I'd gone to like one of these like agencies that give you like different options. And somebody had mentioned it then, oh Canada, you can then eventually do masters and but it never like stuck in my head. And then a few years after when I come back to Nigeria, I then started to speak to a couple of my friends, reached out to a few more people. And then I realized like a lot of people had left already. And I'm like, well, how'd you guys leave? They're like, well, they went to school. And then there's this thing PR that they did. They had to get certain points, write an English test, you know,
Mm,
get some proof of fund, get some documents here and there. So I like did a bit more research, found out what documents do I need, how much money do I need to put aside, what's this test about? And I just thought I would say I'm very like logical in like way I decide things. So I just thought, okay, what the documents, how do I get them? They're very easy to get. The test is a test at the end of the day. Like I've been writing tests of my life. It can't be that hard. Because the
mm,
only the only like stumbling block would have been like proof of funds, but then thankfully like I was able to put the money together and then just put in an application. But I also like same goes back to like just speaking to a lot of people. Every step of the way I was always calling somebody in Canada like, oh, this is what I'm about to do. Is this the best way to put the application in? I'm sure they got tired of like me calling every day, but like thankfully I had like great friends that just like,
yeah,
yeah, okay,
and what year
put in
did you
this.
start, what year did you start the process, like?
I think officially I started in 2019,
uh right, in
but I
2019.
eventually
I mean,
moved
the
here in
exchange rate
2020.
wasn't crazy then. I mean, so I'm
Yeah,
about to be a bit intrusive, like, just to, like, how much was the proof of funds at that point?
at the time when I did mine, because I came with my family, it was like about 5 million naira.
Mm,
I thought I forget now what it is. It was in dollars then, but then like I'm glad I did it then because like I'm hearing the figures now and I'm wondering like How are people supposed to get
Yeah,
that
because
amount
now
of
when I
money
hear
to
the
you?
figures, it's such a ridiculous amount, and I'm like, if I was still in Nigeria, that's the end. All right, let's talk about the English test. I find the English test very interesting because I also had to go through that process. And when I was doing writing my IELTS, I mean, I'd always heard that everybody fails writing. Turns out writing was my highest when I did my IELTS because I spent so many nights practicing. So just did you have any fears when you were like what were you scared of when you were going to write that test? And you know the way Nigeria is, a lot of people don't even know, they haven't even done it, and people are just telling you
Yeah,
that test is so hard, this and that. I actually thought
yeah.
my speaking would be the highest, but I got there and I froze. I froze for quite a bit, but my writing was pretty good. So I just tell me like what was the process for you, like preparing for your IELTS, your English test? How was that?
I say it was, and I don't want to sound like I'm coming off as a Spartans, but like I'd say it was a lot easier than I thought it would be. And like you said, like a lot of people say, oh, you have to write it 5 times, 4 times, you have to write it so
Yeah.
many times, or English is this, the English we speak in Nigeria is that, or what they are looking for is this. So first thing I did was like block out the noise. Like I wasn't taking on any like negative information on purpose
Yeah.
because I just thought like I can't feed my mind with all of that. So I was speaking to like people, watched a lot, like a few YouTube videos, did a few tests, practice tests. Strangely, like I read for my test like the night before because I'd watched a lot of videos, done a lot of practice prior. So I didn't want to overcomplicate this because I'm like, it's English at the end of the day. I've been speaking English all my life.
Well, you're not the typical Nigerian. Let's just say that because
So it's like it can't be that bad. So straight to funny story, I went for my speaking and then we had done like the whole thing and then the instructor is like, oh, she forgot to record it.
oh my god.
So it's like I
So
had to
what
start
did
all
you
over
have to
again.
do? Oh
So we
wow.
had to do it all over again. So I'm like, well,
That would have destabilized me. I know myself.
yeah. So I'm like, well, if I didn't fail that, then really. So and then did that, did the writing, did all everything, and thankfully, like I got a decent, like a fairly decent score at the end of the day. So I'm like, so it's one of those things. Like for me, it's like I always, with everything in life, people always have, this like, oh, it's not possible, it's this. So I'm like, if people can do it, I can. So I've always been that kind of person. So I always
Mm.
like look on the bright side. It can be done, right? So let's figure out. And I was open to failing it, to be honest. So it wasn't like a do or die for me. It's like if I fail it, then I write it again. It's like 60K or 70K. I'm like, yeah, if I fail it, I just save the money again and write it. It's not the end of the world, right? So
That
at
I
least for
mean
me, that was
I
my
like the
approach to it.
mindset. I like them because for me I was a typical Nigerian when I was writing my IELTS because in my mind I was like I can never write this exam again because I mean to me it was like this is an English test and I hated everybody saying, "Oh, you probably have to write it 3." I was like, "No, I'm writing it only once. What do you guys mean? Like we speak English every day." First off, I was
Yeah.
even upset they were making Nigerians write the test. I was like, "We speak English." But yeah, I mean, good. That's very interesting. So now let's talk about like the timelines. How long from your application to how long did it take before you received your ITA, before you knew that, oh yes, I have my PR and it's time to move? How long did that whole process take you?
I see the whole process end to end from like the first day I put in my application to when we moved was almost 3 years. But then there was
Three
pandemic in
years?
between. There was pandemic in between all of that. So that kind of
Mm-mm.
like skewed like the whole timeline. But typically it should have been like 9 months. So we put in my application February on Valentine's Day, I remember 2020. I don't know why I remember that date,
I
but I
mean, it's
remember
Valentine's Day, of
it was the
course.
night of that, or it was the night of Valentine's Day. I put in the application, and
Yeah.
then we're hopeful, like, oh yeah, by the end of the year, by the end next year we'll be moving. And then pandemic, I think, happened that year or the next year or something. And then
Pandemic
that kind of
happened
just like just
2020, so yeah.
2020. So put in your application, and then a few weeks after, the world shuts down, and nothing is happening. Like dead silence. So we just waited and waited and waited. Everybody's like, oh, if you send this email to this place, maybe this person will be this and that. At first, I was just like, see, whatever happens, happens at this point. And then later, sent a few emails, this, that, tried to do everything
Like,
possible.
I
And
feel
then
like you're
just,
skipping because I know your
I,
story. And I don't want to cast you here, so say
I,
it by
I kind
yourself.
of, I kind of like at some point I kind of gave up because I'm like, yeah, if it happens, it happens. Like I can't, like there's nothing. It's out of my hands. I put in my
Yeah.
application,
Okay, I like
you
that
know,
Leke said
and
that, but I
then
think now it's time for me to actually say what happened because I know his story. So he put in the application in February of 2020, like he said. And like when you just put in your application and you're like, okay, it takes a long time. There's no definite timeline of how long it takes. And then the most surprising thing happened, his wife gets pregnant. And then it's like, oh, I don't want her to give birth in Nigeria. And then we
wow.
had, oh my God, Leke is my husband. Okay. So, we had no definite plan of, we had no other plan. Like, we did not have an American visa at the time. So it was like, oh, we're definitely going to have to give birth in Nigeria. At some point, we were looking into giving birth in Dubai. There's nothing we did not do, from sending messages to, what do they call it? You send message to like the prime minister saying Nigeria is dangerous to give birth. Like, it was a
Yeah,
whole thing. Like,
yeah.
I mean, so
We went through all of that.
yeah, and then still nothing happened. Like, we didn't hear from them. And then, okay, so I'm just gonna let you continue from when we had
Yeah,
to
I think
sell
like if
everything
you
and all of that.
yeah, if you okay, so now if you say all of that, yeah, obviously at some point we just figured like it's not like this. There's no way we're going to have our child in Nigeria. So I accepted that, and then so first time we were supposed to travel, we had sold everything in our house. Like we had just our bed, we had no couch. We still had the TV. Like the house was empty, and just our bed, and we're living in the room. And that happened. We ended up like moving to my parents because we like had moved out. There was nothing to
Like,
like. We didn't know how long
you're skipping the
we were going
story.
to be there
Tell the
for.
people what happened. So what happened was, we received our passports back, and then it was time to travel. We already bought our tickets actually, and then like, I think it was like 2 days before our travel, the airline sends a message and said, if you don't have an exemption document, because it was COVID period, they are not going to let you travel. That is, if you've not landed in Canada already and have your PR card, or you were not already a PR, like you already have all your documents, and the documents are the documents you get at the airport when you land. So we didn't have any of
Oh
that.
yeah.
And then, so it was like, and I was still pregnant at the time. So it was, if you do not have those documents, you cannot travel. And we had sold everything. The house was, it was crazy. Like, I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I feel like this is a sign from God that we should not move to Canada.
Yeah, straight. So now that you say all of that, so I maybe I'd say I blocked out most of that in
No,
my
I
mind.
don't
Maybe that's
block
why
out
I
that,
left.
because that was a
Like
very
I'm
strange
not
period.
remembering. I'm not remembering like most. Yeah, that all of that happened, and then we ended up paying. So at the time, we had to pay some money to stay in quarantine hotel for like a few days, and we had paid like thousands of dollars for that. And then we found out we were not good anymore, so I had to mail them, beg them. They had to do a refund. It was like a serious roller coaster. Like I would say,
Yeah.
it was quite tough mentally to like struggle with the fact that you were almost at the point of leaving, and now you can't leave anymore, and you don't know when you can leave, and you've like kind of like put your life at a stop, and now you're going to think of like picking up the pieces again, but it's still lingering at the back of your mind. Like, am I going to go or not? Like, let me know. If
Yeah.
I'm not going, then fine. Let me just make a decision and a conscious effort to like keep living my life. And if I'm going to go, then let me just know when I am. So, for me, yeah, I think that uncertainty, that limbo life, was a huge mental breakdown for me, because I was just like, this limbo is annoying, because it's like, if you leave, like I left my job, and then I think if I get a new job, how long am I going to be at it for? If I
Yeah.
start to build a career and then I have to leave, all that uncertainty was like really bearing on my mind. And then thankfully, I would say at the end of the day, we eventually got like our goal, our green light, so
This
like
was
we
like
can leave.
almost
This
after,
was
like, I'd given birth. The baby was 8 months. Like,
yeah,
like it
like
was,
at that
yeah.
point, we thought, well, I see already what we waited for, so let's just go. And left, like when we got, he left to me, like I was ready to leave like the week after.
Yeah.
Straight, like I was ready to leave like a few days after, because I was like, I waited too long, I'm tired, I'm fed up, and I just want to go and start a new life. But then we pushed it out a few weeks. We even had done like getaway dinner at some point, and then we
Oh
still
yeah.
didn't leave.
So it
So,
was it was so funny
it
going back
was,
to explain to people, like, they're like, why are you guys still in Nigeria? It's like, well, Canada
yeah, we
said we
couldn't
can't
leave.
come. It was just so strange. It was such a strange time. But yeah,
Yeah.
so that was that. Now let's talk about breaking the news to like your family and friends. Because I mean, we know how Nigerians can be. Most people, when they are traveling or relocating, everybody keeps that information very close to their chest. It's like, I don't want to tell anybody. So did you have like, were there any strange reactions where people happy for you? Like, were people scared? Like, what was it like breaking the news to like people that, oh yeah, I'm leaving?
For me, it wasn't that difficult because, like I said, like most of my friends had left already. I was like one of the last few people in Nigeria. Even my brother had left to like the UK, like before pandemic or just after pandemic.
Yeah.
So, like my parents knew people that had left. I think at some point in my life, my parents were thinking of leaving also. My siblings, my family, extended family had people that had left. So it wasn't anything out of the ordinary for them. It wasn't like strange news to them. I guess the only part that they struggled with was, well, you're actually now leaving. Like at the back of their mind, they thought, well, if you decide to leave at some point, we know like how the country is. But I guess the reality of the fact that, okay, now you're actually leaving. I think that's where the shock was, not the leaving itself. But like they took it well, like they understood like what the issues were, just like I wanted to build my family. I wanted to, live a good life. I wanted to explore the world, live a better life, see what opportunities were out there. And they
Yeah.
understood like Nigeria wasn't really offering that, and they couldn't either. So it wasn't an easy decision or something for them to come to terms with, but I think they understood. And for me, that's it. Like as long as they understood, I was fine with it.
Yeah. I
Like
mean, for
yeah,
me, it was the opposite. My parents' style of attachment is very clingy. So when I first broke the news to them, like my mom was actually upset. My dad was upset. I knew he was upset, but I think his anger was it was more of fear than being upset. Like, because I've never lived away from home, like apart from when I went to uni, and I went to uni in Nigeria. So I've never been far away from home. And I think they were very like, what do you mean you want to go to another country? And like it was a lot of
yeah,
convincing. Like it was actually
yeah,
so
yeah,
funny. And then my child was their first grandchild. So in their mind, they were now trying to guilt trip, like, oh, so we're not going to be in our granddaughter's life. And I'm like,
yeah.
well, you can get a visa and visit. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I think that's one of the like differences between like people that move. So mine was the opposite. I
yeah.
was the second child. My parents had a grandchild already. They were fine with it. Like they themselves like traveled a lot. I'd been away from home quite a bit growing up. So like I would go for summers alone. So like my parents are fine with, like they knew I could survive by myself. I knew I could survive by myself. My brother had left. So like they were like surviving part was it, and then we're not very like my family is not the most clingy type. It's like everybody does their own thing, but like we're cool as a family. So and that's like for me that's one of the things that like even people moving like need to understand. Like, every family is different, every connection is different,
Yeah.
people themselves are different. Like you said, you had never lived away from home. I've done it like quite a number of times. So
Yeah.
for me, I wasn't worried, I wasn't scared. Like I'd spent so many months and weeks away alone. My parents would travel for months at a time. I just like leave me. My brother was in the UK, my other brother was like working. So spending time alone for me or just surviving by myself wasn't new to me. So
Honestly, even me myself, I was pretty scared because also I'm very dependent on my parents. So it was a lot. It was both of us going through it. The day I was leaving, it was tears galore. It was a lot. But I mean, we managed to convince them. I mean, I've been here for barely 2 years. My parents have already visited. So it's just showing the kind of attachment skill we have. So okay, can we just move to the travel day? What was travel day like for you? Like what were the emotions you felt? Like how many boxes did you have? Like I see a lot of YouTube videos of Nigerians moving, and some of them really crack me up because when I see people, I mean, I saw a video of some girl saying she's bringing something as little as biro and ruler that you will not find it in Canada. Like I don't know. I don't know if it's excitement or just share misinformation. I don't know what that's about. But yeah, what was moving day like? Like travel day, like the day you were leaving Nigeria. What was that like for you?
yeah, it was a bit emotional, I would say, but not as emotional for me as it was, I think, for you.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like I think we had 10 boxes. and we had like it was a ridiculous amount of boxes that we had. Like the moving itself, we left during Easter. But then because
Mm.
I had like I think everybody around me already knew I was ready to leave like the moment I got my visa. So everybody was just like they were just basically was countdown for me. But like the day we eventually left, because I'd never been to Canada, so it's like it wasn't familiar territory. Nobody in my family has ever been to Canada. Like nobody in my extended family has ever been to Canada. They've been
Same.
everywhere else, but not Canada. But like for me, it's like, well, it's just somewhere new. We'll figure it out when we get there. So it was a bit emotional. Like when we got on the plane, I remember making a joke before we left. Like when I get to Canada at the airport, I'm going to like lie down. But obviously, I didn't do that. When we landed, I just took it all in. I'm like, well, we're here now. What do we do?
On the
So
other
it
hand,
was
I was
emotional.
dramatic as the
Yeah.
Nigerian that I am. When I got in, the first thing I said is, "This land will favor me." That was literally
Yeah.
the first thing I said. Like, yeah. So I mean, moving day was pretty chilled. Like, yeah, I was emotional a bit, but as soon as I got on the plane, I mean, we had an 8 month old we were traveling with. So how emotional can you really be, though? You just had to like
Yeah.
get with the program and move. So yeah. So now let's just talk about, yeah. Now you're in Canada. Like, what was that like when you landed? Did you have a place to stay? Did you have somebody come pick you up? Like, what were some of the first initial challenges? Okay, before we talk about the challenges, just tell me, what was landing in Canada like? How did that make you feel, considering all the stress you had gone through before you finally got to Canada?
I think landing was like a just relief finally. Like it was like finally, no, this limbo is done. Like I know like now where like how to live, like how I'm going to live my life. Like the limbo was done. Like for me that was it. That clarity was really it for me. And when we landed, I would say first the weather was, it's Canadian weather is cold, right?
Yeah, I believe
But
it. I
like I
think it
think like
snowed that day, which was weird because
yeah,
it was in
it snowed the
April.
day we got, yeah. Yeah, it was in April and it snowed on the day, and I just thought, is this a sign? Because it had not snowed like leading up to that day, and then it snowed on the day. But like before we left, we had like sorted out Airbnb. So like my wife had a cousin that lived there, and I checked like a bunch of places for us. Paid, done everything before we came. So which is one of the things like that really helped us. Settling in wasn't as tough. We had a place to stay. Had gone, gotten the keys. Like arranged pickup for us with our 10 boxes. So, all of that, it was easy. I guess for me, it was just like, it's a new place. I've never been here. I had no clue what
Yeah.
roads lead to where, what was what. And for me, that was my own like struggle because I've always been one to like, I want to know like my environment. I want to understand like where everything is, understand like the geography of the land, where this is. If I need this, I know where to go. So those first few weeks and days, for me, I struggled with that quite a bit. Just not knowing where I felt like I was in the wilderness for some days. But like as time went by, going around, talking to friends, them hanging out with them showing you around, got a lot more comfortable. And like it takes time, or it takes time to settle in fully.
Yeah,
So
it does. It does take time, and everybody's kind of in a hurry when you land here because one thing about Canada, unlike Nigeria, once you land, you literally almost start spending money, whether you
yeah,
have a job or not. Like, you literally
yeah.
start spending money. Yeah, so interesting. So now let's talk about some of the challenges. Like, obviously now you're in a new country. It's time to get a job. It's time to open a bank account. Things like that. Like, what was that process like for you? And how long did it take you before you got your first job? And what do you do?
Okay, so let's start from the beginning. So challenges, I would say first was like I wouldn't even say the weather was a challenge because I didn't mind the cold. It wasn't. It was just it took some days to get used to it, but it wasn't too bad. Say challenges were for me, like I said, was just like understanding where I was. I felt like I was just in the wilderness. I didn't know where anything was. Like I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't just like leave the house and say, "Oh, I'm going out to this place." I don't know where anywhere is. So it was like that realization of now you need to like re-immerse yourself in a new place. For me, that was the number one challenge. Like getting a job, even opening a bank account. Like in Nigeria, obviously we don't have things like credit scores or like
Yeah.
nobody's like checking your history. So all of that, like wrapping my head around that was a struggle for me at first also. Like SIN number, we don't have all of
Mm,
that.
yeah, I remember
Health
that.
card, like, doing all of that for me was we don't have that. We've never had that. So understanding that took some getting used to, like just understanding like, okay, you need a credit card, you need like this, you need to get a GP. In Nigeria, we just go into any hospital, register, and that's it. Like I don't need to
Yeah.
wait till I know I need. So all of that took some getting used to, just regular like in the Canadian life, and then getting a job. So I do supply chain. I've done that all my life. Quite a few years, over a decade now. Getting a job was, it was interesting. Getting a job, like they say, is a job itself, and I can
Yeah.
say that an actual fact. And I think maybe what helped me was maybe like, that's life. Life, like, you can connect the dot backwards, and that's the way I look at it. So those years that led up to us leaving Nigeria, those like that limbo period, I like applied to jobs here, done a few interviews. I'd gotten a few pointers as to how to interview, what to say, what they're looking out for, what skill set they're looking out for, and they say like everything that you say that I thought was cliche then actually like stood out to me. It's like technical skills are for a given, but like soft skills, how you speak, like your tone, how you interact with people, how you build those relationships, were like really forefront. Like how do you undulate your voice when you're interviewing? Like what's your outlook? Things like that. Talking about the weather, talking about like dogs, things like that. Like it really stood out for me when I was interviewing. So it was tough, and putting in more than like 10 applications every day. Just wake up in the morning, put in an application, put in applications just for jobs. Maybe hear back from one or two. That
Yeah.
took some mental toughness, trying to get an apartment, because we were like in an Airbnb and it was pretty expensive. Trying to get apartment. Landlords are saying, oh, you have to get credit score, you have to show that you're fully employed. At some point, like I was offering to pay like a lot of months in advance. And for the first time, landlord is like, yeah, that seems shady. It's like you want to offer to
Yeah.
pay rent in advance. I'd never heard that, because in Nigeria you pay rent 1 year, right? Like I have the money, I can pay it 1 year in advance, and like let me just get a house. But that also took some mental readjustment for me. It's like, yeah, it
No,
doesn't
I
work
mean,
like
let's
that.
not let's take it one by one. So we're going to speak about like how long it took you to finally get a place, but let's just talk about the job, like getting a job. You say you work in supply chain. Like,
Mhm.
where were you applying for these jobs? Like, when did you
So I
finally get a
did.
job? Like, from the day you landed to when you got your job offer, how long did that take? And how long was the interview process? Like, let's talk about that.
Okay, yeah, we can break that down. So I'd say I'm one of the lucky few. Like I got a job.
Very lucky few.
Started my job like a month after I got here, which, speaking to a lot of people, is like it's luck. I would put it down to luck. I would even say it was the amount of effort I put in, and it just goes back to like a lot of things people say, like networking. So my first job, I would say, was through networking. So my friend had moved a few years ago, and he did a referral for me. And even though the job wasn't in what I had done before, so like my first job was in project management. I did that earlier in my career, and I just like never liked it. And it also then goes back to like me being open to opportunities, and it's also something like we'll touch on later on in this conversation. I was just like being open to new opportunities. So I thought, well, supply chain project management, there are a lot of transferable skills there. Just getting something to do first was like top of mind for me. So I'd gotten that one job at first. And then I got another job like a few days after, because I'd been interviewing also for that one. But it's also like just that mental toughness of like, yeah, you go through a lot of interviews, you yes, get some callbacks, you get some stages, and you get dropped off. Just keep trying, keep trying. And when it clicks. Like I got in, I got the project management. I took that instead because I thought a new flavor to life. Let's see what else, what's out there. It was something I'd not done before. I'd not done in many years. It was in a new industry I'd never worked before. So all of that like nudged me in taking that job. And then now I'm back in supply chain, strangely. So for me, it's just like that openness and that like willing to explore. And which like every time like when I got to the point of making that decision between the two jobs. Like the first one I got myself, the second one my friend did a referral. Like pay aside, because even like one was paying a lot more than the other one. It was for me. It's
So
like
let me
why?
guess, you took
What
the
was
one that was paying more.
strangely I didn't. I took the less paying one,
Why?
which is strange because it's like okay, so I weighed my options. One, I had to go into the office every day. One, I didn't have to. I had to go once or twice a week. One was in a new field, new experience, new industry. One was what I'd always done. So I thought like future wise, like first I had a family, I had a young daughter. I was still like settling into the country. I didn't have a place to live of my own yet. I didn't have a car to get around. The office was like almost 2.5 hours away. All of that one, like I could put all of that side by side. Like the other one was hybrid. Pay was less, but it was a new opportunity. So I
Right.
took that one instead. The pay was still decent. Like it was fairly decent. Like even when I spoke to like people that had been here, like the pay is decent enough. And I weighed it like how much did I need to survive? And it was good enough. So I took that instead. And I like in hindsight now, I'm glad I took that. Like I'm glad like I explored even that opportunity. I have that under my belt now to say,
Again,
okay, well,
oh, that's nice.
I did
Again,
that
just
a
to be a
bit.
little nosy. So, since that was your first job in Canada, do you mind sharing like what was like the pay for your first job? Like how much was your offer on your first job? Do you, if you don't mind, it's fine, but do you mind?
I'm going to give a very wide range.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, I'm going to stick to that. As I say, it was between 60 and 100K. So it's somewhere in between
That
this,
is a
whatever
very
you know.
wide range.
Yeah, like I said, whatever number comes to mind, yeah, that's the
Okay.
number. Just like it was good enough to pay my bills and, survive and still have a little
Okay. To be
left
fair,
over.
60 and 100 for 1 month after landing in the country is very decent. Yeah, that's very decent.
Yeah.
All right, now let's talk about the house, finding a house. We're gonna come back and talk more about your job and all of that. But let's just talk about finding a place to stay. What was that like? Like moving from your Airbnb into your own apartment. What was that like?
Yeah, so like I said, it was a struggle. It was quite a struggle because you're putting an offer on a house, and even like at first, I didn't like I said, when I was living in Nigeria, it was fairly easy for me to get an apartment because it's like you have the money you pay, and that's it, done deal, right? You're not dealing with a lot of documentation. But then here it's different because they're looking at your credit score, they're looking at if you have work, they're looking at a lot of things. And I just thought that's
Yeah,
just unnecessary. I have the money, I'll pay. I can pay you 1 year rent in advance. But like they didn't want that. So it was a struggle putting in a lot of applications. I lost count at so I think we definitely put in more than 20 applications for different homes. Like, go and look at it. The agent goes to look at it for you using so I used like a lot of different platforms, Kijiji, Facebook Marketplace. I think there was Zula, Zompire. Now I forget like the different names, and then on top of that, like
yeah.
speaking to different agents that were looking at different apartments, giving them a budget to work with, and also even like the struggle of like where exactly do I want to live? I don't know anywhere. So it's not like I know, like in Lagos, I know if Leke or I know Aja or Jakonde, I know the mainland. I didn't really know anywhere. So I just like asked around. Thankfully, my friend was living somewhere. I had gone to look in the area. So, they kind of gave us, a good, like, we could narrow down our list of areas that we wanted to live in. And then also like proximity to like and I was also looking at where opportunities for work were. So like where's job and where am I looking to live? Can I live close to where there were more opportunities? So certain areas have more opportunities. Certain
Right.
areas don't. Like also distance to like the center of town. So I've always been like I don't want to live too far from town. I don't want to live in like like the outskirts or somewhere obscure. I want to live like close to town because I like to enjoy myself. Go out a few times, and not worry about how much distance I have to commute just to have a good time. So it was all of
Yeah.
that factor, all those factors that had to be considered to, pick a place to live. So we eventually, got lucky on Facebook Marketplace, and I would say it was sheer luck because I just would just be randomly messaging people on Facebook Marketplace and Kijiji and Zula and random websites. And we're lucky to speak to a landlord directly. And they were a very nice couple that just moved out of their apartment and we're looking for, a young couple to move in. Anyway, I got a job. I had a job at the time. My friend that had been here for years also did like a referee for me. And they looked at all of that and they were like, well, you seem to be like a young couple that's looking to settle in the country. You seem like you have your head screwed on, you have a job. We
Yeah.
met them. They also like interview you for apartments here. So, we did that and, it worked out for us. So interesting, like we moved in on a Sunday and I started work on a Monday. Like the next day, literally, we didn't have a couch in the house. Like I had to like like my table was makeshift. It was, just touch and go every day, one day at a time. Yeah.
Yeah, I know finding a house in Canada, especially if you move to Ontario, is crazy. That's all I can say. But yeah, good
Yeah,
for you that
yeah.
you finally found. So now let's go back and talk about the job. So let's talk about like your first day at work, being that it's your first time working with people of different races, people from different backgrounds. What was did you have to go into the office on your first day, and what was that like for you? Because I mean, I know I've spoken to a lot of people, and most people imposter syndrome is like the biggest thing on like the first day, the first month before truly acclimatizing yourself with what you've gotten yourself into. So what would you say,
Yeah, yeah.
what was your first day of work like?
Yeah, first day I was work was a bit different. Like it was then it dawned on me like, okay, now you're working here now. So I done 1 week of remote training. And then so
Right.
like even like if I step back a bit, most of my career I always had to work with like different nationalities, different people from like different social classes. So
Mm.
like relating to people wasn't strange to me. And then obviously doing a master's with an MBA with people from all walks of life in all different countries that have very levels of English. Also, it wasn't a very strange to me. It's just now actually going into an office full of people like that. Maybe that's where I struggled a bit. And then even like dressing, right? So the first day I went to work, I would tell you for a fact, like I dressed up like I was going to a Nigerian office, tucked in my shirt, almost wore a tie. I just thought, yeah, that might be pushing it. Tucked in my shirt, wore corporate shoes, tried to look as formal as possible. And I got to the office
Mm.
and people were wearing t-shirts and jeans and sneakers. So I looked a bit out of place, to be honest. I looked very out of place. And like at lunch, I went to the bathroom, I tucked out my shirt, tried to roughen up my hair a bit, just try to blend in as much as possible because you don't want to
That's
stand
very
out, right? And
interesting.
then yeah, like I always thought I don't want to stand out. Like I still stood out yesterday, I'm going to say because of like I was a person of color, so there were not that many. It was a mixed crowd, but you know, I was like a minority, I would say so. But
Yeah.
like I just thought like I would let my work speak for me. It was even like just understanding like the way they communicate, how the work is done. It took some time to settle in, like a few weeks. And like going back to what you said, imposter syndrome. First few weeks I thought, shit, how am I going to do this? Am I going to make this work? Is this going to work? But then
Especially
it's just
since it
like
was a
believing in
new
yourself.
field. Like you
Yeah,
said,
it
you
was a
hadn't
new
worked in
field.
project
Like
management.
never done project management. Never worked in, so I ended up working in pharmaceutical. I've never worked in pharmaceutical all my life. Like it worked almost how many years? I've never done that. So working with certain tools and softwares, I've never done. So it took some brushing up on some that I knew. Also took like a lot of self development, staying up late nights, reading up a lot, speaking to different people, doing a lot of work on myself, and like, just trying to
Mm.
keep up as much as possible. So a lot of work in the beginning, just to also be more confident in meetings, and then like oh like so I fortunately or unfortunately like I got placed on one of like the biggest projects at the time in Canada, which it then goes back to also like imposter syndrome. Like I've not done this before. I don't even know what you're talking about half the time. But like doing all that self development, it went a long way in helping me,
So you say
become more
self
confident.
development, like, because I mean, I know people will be listening and trying to really understand when you like self development is such a broad term. Like, what were you doing? What exactly were you doing?
So different things. So I took a few courses on Coursera, did a few on Udemy, spoke to plenty of people like within and outside the company. Luckily, my friend had just like so my friend that did the referral for me just like left just a few weeks before I took on the job, but he was still within like the same umbrella company. So spoke to him a lot, spoke to even people within the company, spoke to other colleagues a lot, did a lot of self-studying. So like reading through emails, reading through reports that I could find within the organization, looking through like documents, trying to understand what was asked, and then going back to like my job itself, what exactly is expected of me in this role. So that's what I mean by self-development, reading a lot, studying a lot, asking a lot of questions,
Mm.
and just trying to understand things. So, yes, it was a lot of work, but it paid off eventually, I would say.
Yeah, good for you. Good for you. All right, now let's talk about like
would you say, like, I mean, before I hop on to the next question, would you say you're settled now? Would you say, like, what point in your relocation journey would you say you're in now? Like, are you now just like coasting, or are you still like looking for more opportunities? Do you still have doubts about I need to leave this country, or what? Like, what phase are you in right now?
So I think I've gone past the phase of uncertainty. I'm not there at the phase of full comfort yet, but I've gone past that phase of uncertainty, that phase of like, is this country going to work for me? Because I've seen like in the short stay here, how like things have worked out thankfully in my favor, and like I've also like seen how my friends' lives have changed in the short space of time that they've been here for. So I've gone past that phase of uncertainty and being unsure of what the country had to offer or has
Yeah.
to offer. I've gone past that stage. I'm like I say I'm at that point of looking on the like looking forward to the horizon now. Trying to see that that the sun is finally about to come forth. I would say seeing that brightness, the light at the end of the tunnel. I can see a glimpse of it now. I'm just like just grinding it out at the end at this point. Like just so I've changed jobs within the space of time I've been here. Luckily, I've changed jobs. I'm now like in a much more comfortable situation. But then at the end of the day, do you ever really feel fully comfortable? Because, and it's not a thing of like comparing my life to people's lives. It's just saying like what they've done and
Yeah.
seeing like the opportunities that exist. Like there's still a lot to be done. But I'm still appreciative of like what I've done and of what I've been able to do for myself. Like I looking back, and it's also like looking back also like where I've come from and where I am now and what opportunities still lie ahead. So I'm like in that middle ground of it's not bad. It
But it
can
can
be
be
a lot
better.
better. Yeah, it can be a lot. It can always be a lot better. Always be.
Yeah.
But like I'm also thankful for like where I am right now. So yeah, I
I
can't
mean,
complain.
that's
That's what I would
interesting. I love
say.
the way you answered that question, because that just speaks a lot to contentment, being content with where you are, but still trying to work hard to get to the next phase. And that's something I feel like a lot of people need to have with their relocation journey. You need to be patient with yourselves, appreciate the
Yeah,
small wins, because I mean, without the small wins, there will be no big wins. So yeah, I love that you
yeah.
said
Like
that. So
just
let's
appreciate
just
like every day.
yeah. So, I mean, not to be an agent of doom, but I just want to speak about like some moments of doubts, some moments that did you ever have those? Some moments where, I mean, because I myself I've had my fair share of moments of doubts and crying like every night, like, what the hell am I doing in Canada? Like, why am I in this country? I was pretty comfortable back home, and I'm like, why did I just let go of all of that to come and start over? So, I mean, did you ever have, I mean, you that got a job 1 month, did you even ever have that phase?
Yeah, of course. I still have it to today. Like and like that. Now it goes back to what I said. Like I'm not like I'm thankful for where I am, but I know like there's a lot more, and I'm also like so there's like different moments of doubt and fear. I know like when I left Nigeria, felt like I was at the end of like what the country had to offer. So that also fear is like I wouldn't even say it's fear. It's just like you're left for a reason. So keep that reason, let that reason keep driving you, and then you also want to explore the world. So that enthusiasm has always pushed me forward. And then I would say I'm also like just a very positive person generally. I'm like I hold nothing to heart. It's like the world will go on regardless. Like just look on the bright side. And the universe has worked in my favor. I'm not the most religious person, but I believe in like the law of the universe. Like if you put good vibes out there, like good will come. Just do your part, do your best,
Yeah.
and be content with life. So for me, like there's still doubt every day. Obviously, like I'm married, I've got a kid. I want to provide like the best life for my wife and my kid, and even for myself. So it's like I want to live my life also. I want like in like 40 years time when I like say my story to my child, and if I had like grandchildren, if that comes along, or if that happens, or like just people generally, like I want them to say, "Wow, that's an interesting life you've lived," and like I also enjoyed myself. So every day counts. Like you should enjoy, it. But then also there's that fear of like I can't also rest on my laurels. Like I can't say, oh, I'm comfortable now and I'm going to just take a back seat. I'm still like trying to push the envelope every day, trying to see what I can do every day. So it's one day at a time, do as much as I can. That would also add into the next day. And it's a cumulative effort at the end of the day. It's like compounded interest. So to me, that's how I see life. What you put in today will compound like in the next few weeks and next month and next year. So just keep grinding, keep doing it. And like you said, it's like just being positive and just hoping that, like, knowing that it will work out, but it takes time. But be
Yeah.
content with like where you are, as long as you see whatever small progress you see. And that's how I've like lived my journey since we moved here. It's like whatever small progress you see, enjoy it. Like, bask in it and then keep pushing. But like don't be negative, like this hasn't worked. There's some things that have worked out. Like, for you're not homeless. You can feed yourself. Like, that's enough to be thankful for. So like for me, it's just be thankful and then try and strive going forward. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So I have some unique questions I like to ask my guest. So let's talk about milestones. Saying like 5 years from now, in like 10 years from now, like what are some things you hope to have achieved living in Canada? Like, what are some things that will make you feel like, yeah, this journey, leaving my home country and moving elsewhere, moving abroad, was really worth it?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Like, if you phrase it like that, that's an interesting question. For me, is first, what is my why? Why did I leave? And like, if it goes back to like what I said in the beginning, is I know there were more opportunities out there in the world that I want to explore. So those, like, as long as I can do that, I'm on track. Milestone wise, like, and it goes back to like when people move here, everybody's like, it's like herd mentality, and that's where I sit. And it might sound like sound rude, but it's like everybody wants to do the same thing. And I'm like, I want to go on my own path, on my own journey. Everybody comes here and says, well, in a few years I want to buy a house that I'm living in. It's not like, it's nice to have, but it's not one of my goals.
You
Strangely,
don't
it's
want to
not
buy a
like it's
house?
like, I don't want to buy a house. Like, I don't want, like, that's not top of mind for me. Like, I want to like eventually be able to own homes, but it's not like that's not top of mind for me. There are
Like when
other
you
bigger
say own
things.
homes, do you mean like I mean, I just want people to understand, because when you say it like that, it's easy for people to misinterpret what you're saying, because owning a home will always be a good thing regardless of how you look at it. So
Yeah,
when you
yeah,
say own
definitely.
homes, do you mean like in terms of like investments, or like what do you mean?
Yeah. It's just like also looking at people's struggles and like things that people have done. So I'm always learning from people's like life choices, and I
Right.
don't want to say mistakes, but also things like that. So a lot of things I've seen, like people move here and like the first thing on their mind is, I want to buy a house that I can live in. But it's like, financially, does it make sense to do that? I'm always like looking at the numbers. Does it make sense to do that? Like, if I buy a home that I live in, as opposed to maybe buying an investment property, which pays off, which gives me the life that I want. I want to live in a good environment. I want to live close to town. Can I afford to live in that area, buy a home there?
Oh,
Maybe
right,
not now.
right, right. Right. I
So
get
like,
what you
but do I
mean.
want an investment property? Yes, I would. So maybe I can get my investment property somewhere else that isn't close to town, but still makes financial sense. So for me, it's like those calculations are always going on in my head. It's like, do I pay more to live in a house I like, where I like, but like suffer financially,
Mm.
just just because I want to live in that area, or do I take my time? And then like, there's a good quote that I heard somewhere. It's like, if you can't afford to buy a house where you want to live, rent a home where you want to live, and live around the areas you want to live, so that you can have the life you want, be around the people you want to be. So that's the
Yeah,
way I've
it's
always
giving
lived life.
perspire to inspire.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm that perspire to aspire and perspire guy. I'm always like listening to like motivational stuff, trying to be in the right frame of mind, right headspace. So yeah, that's for me. Like that's one of my milestones. Also, it's just like having like financial backing, like just being financially comfortable and
Grounded,
being able
yeah.
to make decisions off the cuff. I don't mean like I want to spend money recklessly, but it's like I want to be able to have the choice to say, I want to do something, but like I can afford to do it, but it then becomes a choice of, do I want to do it? Because
Mm.
I feel like, this our age is like, you want to do something and you just do it. But it's like, I want to get to the point where if I decide to, so like one of my greatest goals, and like one of the things I love the most in life is buying watches, like wristwatches. I've got a few of them. And I want to get to a point where I can like shell out a few thousands or on a watch and not have to like struggle about it.
Yeah.
Like, I want to decide, if I want a car, I can buy it and I don't have to think about it. But then I want to have that choice to make to get to that point where I can decide to do it or not do it. And it's not a question of if I have the money to do it. And I also want to travel the world. So obviously moving to Canada and doing PR, citizenship, and getting a second passport is top of mind for everybody. So it's top of mind for me also, having that freedom of like, if I want to go on holiday somewhere with my family, I can decide to do it. And I don't have to think about the long wait for visa and providing like every document under the sun, like birth certificate, my mother's maiden name, things like that. I can decide to up and go if I want. So it's
Yeah.
things like, for me, those are the milestones. I might not have like the typical milestones that everybody has. And then even work wise, like career wise, I've not been the person to want to start a business particularly. It's just not my thing. I'd rather build my career out. So I've also been, that's also something I'm looking forward to, like working in different certain companies that I've always looked up to. Thankfully, my career has gone good so far. In the short time, I've been able to do a few things that I didn't think I would be able to do. So it also is looking up. So as long as I go down that path and I'm on that path, I'm good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Funny thing that you mentioned the watch thing, because another question I like to ask, just so we're not always so serious, is yeah, what like in terms of lifestyle and fun, like what are some things because you're in Canada has been able to help you do, like what are some of those things, or maybe not help you do right now, but you think because you're in Canada you'll be able to do this. Like now I'm talking about like whatever dreams you saw. I mean, I spoke to somebody recently and they said because they're in Canada they feel one day they'll be able to fly private. I was like, huh? The one that is doing all of us is different.
Yeah, everybody has like different things. Like, and for me, it's like even like the simple things to start off like with the most basic of basics. Now, I don't have to worry about like traffic as much. I don't have to worry about lights or good internet. Like, I don't have to worry about, oh, if you go to bed at night, so did I plug in my phone? Did I charge my laptop?
Wow,
Is there going to be
Nigeria really did
traffic?
a number on us.
Yeah, Nigeria really did a number on me. Like, I like to go out a lot. Like, I have fun. Go to like a lounge, go to a nice club, hang out with friends, have a drink. I don't have to worry about like if I leave my house at 9 p.m.
Police be somewhere on the
Am I going to
road.
get stopped? So interesting story. Like when I moved to Canada at first and I started driving, I would drive at night for no reason. Like I would take a longer route and like go down strange streets and like come up like on a blind spot. And I'm thinking if this was Nigeria, when I turn, I'm going to like
And
encounter
there's a police
police.
waiting for you.
There's like
Yeah.
a police checkpoint, but you don't have that. So like my mind is free of a lot of things. So now I'm thinking of like taking off baseball or rugby. I've always like enjoyed it, or handball, something along those lines, like taking up a sport again. Like I used to play football a bit, but then
Yeah.
now I'm like, there's a lot of opportunities to do that, or joining a club of people. I don't know, just something that I would never have done, or the opportunity to not have presented itself in Nigeria. So and I'm thinking of joining a football club, not like soccer, like actual American football club
Mm.
recently. I'm just like waiting for the right time, doing a few
Yeah,
things
that's
personally
interesting. You seem
before
like you
my
have
time.
some interesting things ahead. All right, Leke. So we're coming to the end of the podcast, and like, my final question. Actually, this is no question. The final thing I would like you to do is if you could give like the listeners one piece of advice, just one piece of advice, nothing too much, just one. Like either people that are already in Canada and are having a hard time, or like who would you like to advise? Either people in Canada that are having a hard time like finding that balance, or people in Nigeria that are still struggling to like leave Nigeria and they're looking forward to leaving Nigeria and like moving to a new country and starting their lives. Like who would you like to advise and what would the advice be?
Yeah, that's tough. Like I have a bunch of advice I can
Oh,
give,
just,
but
I
like
know you have a bunch, so that's
I
why I
have like a lot.
emphasize just
I'm like,
one.
so I'm gonna try and say like more than one actually,
Okay,
because I
no,
think
no
a
worries.
lot of us struggle with a lot of things at different points. People trying to leave Nigeria, I can't really advise you because I don't know like what point you are. If you already know you're going to leave, yeah, I can advise that. If you're not sure when you leave, I unfortunately don't know what to say. I guess just try and make the best of a bad situation, I would say. But if you're sure you're going to leave, like prepare yourself mentally for living somewhere else, like settling in somewhere else. Prepare yourself mentally, whatever you can do to get ready to come. do. So if it's like trying to figure out what you want to do when you come, so like the internet exists, you can look up like different jobs if you're looking to change jobs, and if you're looking to like continue your career, just look at like start applying to jobs, try start speaking to people, start trying to get referrals, interview, and be open minded. Also, like don't expect like life will be like like a parallel transition. So you might have to take a step back at some point, which I had to do. But then it's not the end of the world because there's a lot more life ahead than like where you start from. It's like
Mm,
how far is not how quick. So for me, that's my advice for people that are just coming. You know, be open minded and be patient. People that are already here, same, like be very open minded and be very patient with yourself and like just take it one day at a time. Do whatever you can that moves the needle forward. Now, if it's like taking on more skills, you're just opening up your mind to more opportunities and also be very positive. Like it can be tough. But then also I would say one key advice is also leave your house a lot. Like
yeah.
talk to people a lot. Like leave your house. You have to leave your house and like talk to people, see the outside. Like literally touch grass outside because there's a whole world outside. Like if you need to like maybe take the bus or some days just so you can see like what's happening outside. You need to be aware of your environments, but like also be very open. And it, like I'm saying this because like this is advice I took on. It's like being very open, like taking on a hybrid job was one thing I always wanted to do because I've always said I can never work like fully remote because I feel like my mind gets constrained if I'm home all the time. So I need to
Yeah.
like see the world out there. It also helps me like get in touch with people, see outside what's happening in the environment, see what's happening in the world. But being also open minded goes back to my career. I was open minded to doing project management. I did it, and then I ended up being like almost like I ended up almost as a manager in the first like less than 1 year into the role. This is something I'd never done before. But just because I was open minded, like I put my best foot forward, I was developing myself every day. No, that gave me that opportunity. In my wildest dream, I never like every time people ask me like, "How did you do it?" Like I don't know, I just did my best every day, and like I worked my ass off, like literally worked my ass off.
Yeah.
I was like I'm sure Tele
Like
can say
Jay-Z
what
said,
there was.
keep showing up till they call you
Like I just
chairman.
showed up
Yeah.
exactly, showed up every day and put my best foot forward every day, and I was just positive about it all. And like even seeing me in my present role, I'm like one of the people of color in like my grade. And I don't want like that's the most I'm gonna say. So some days like I
Can
have
you just
imposter
say
syndrome.
black? Why are you saying people of color?
Like that's it. Like I'm like, and some days I go into the office. I'm like the only person that looks like maybe like one or two. But like in my grade, I'm like maybe the only person that looks like me. But like I haven't let that stop me. And some days it feels odd. But then I'm like, well, yeah, yeah, now they hired you. They clearly think you have something to offer. So show them that you have something to offer. And I've been able to do that in a few months that I've been there. So for me, it's like show up to the occasion, like in your best outfit and in your best armor and with your best, best ammunition and do your best every day. Like it's a one day at a time journey. So it will take a while. Like things take time. Like no mountains were not built overnight. So it takes time, but enjoy the journey also. So some days I'm like, yeah, I just want to take it easy. But like I feel like I've achieved something today. And so even if you're still in the process of getting a job, you're still settling in, enjoy the moments because like people say, oh, like when like now that I have a job, I miss the days when I was idle and I didn't have a job. Because like I'm so busy now, I don't have the time to enjoy myself as much as I used to. But like still find the time. So for me, that's the advice. Like one day at a time, give yourself a lot of grace, but keep moving forward every day. Do something different every day that moves you forward, better prepares you for the next day. Because if you sit and wallow, the time will go by, the days will go
Yeah.
by.
Yeah.
Like 1 year will go by and you've done nothing, as opposed to 1 year of even doing something you don't like. It's still better than doing
You're gonna
something
learn
that's
something regardless. Yeah.
exactly like no knowledge is lost. My journey in life has been very interesting. Like maybe if I ever end up back on this podcast, like I say my journey from beginning, I've done like the most random things in life, like the
Yeah.
most literally most random things. But over time, I've seen how I've been able to connect those knowledge, that knowledge, that information, that experience, and now it has helped me even in my journey going forward. So no knowledge is lost, no experience is useless. As long as you know how to put it all together and and move forward in life, that's it. Enjoy the journey. It's a day at a time. It'll be tough now, but the good days are ahead, and look forward to those good days. Dream of when you can drive the car you want, live in the house you want. Dream of it, and then see like, how do I get there each day, one day at a time. You'll get there eventually.
Yeah, I love that. So basically, you guys have your big picture and let your big picture guide you every day. I love that. Thank you so much, Leke, for doing this. This was a very, very interesting episode. I didn't think we were going to talk this long, but I really, really enjoyed this. And I hope a listener or 2 or 3 or 10,000 will have a few things to learn and pick up from your journey. Again, thank you for doing this with me. And yeah.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad. Like, I hope like, even if it's one person that like listens to what I say and like takes it to heart, I'll be happy. Like, I'll be happy even if it's one person. I'm glad, like, to share my story. My story is still unfolding, and hopefully, well, like, when I do even more things, I get invited back to the pod.
Hopefully. I mean, we can do like a 5 years after episode where we come back and see how much more you've developed. All right, guys.
Thanks for having me.
So thank you for listening to this episode of Our Greener Pastures, our pilot episode, actually. This is the first episode we ever recorded. And it was just so interesting, like, living that story again, because Leke is my husband, and that was equally my experience moving to Canada. It was such a turmoil, like going through everything we had to go through to finally get here. I just hope this can like provide some kind of context for people to see that relocation isn't always so easy, but if you put your back into it, as with anything anyways, it will always work out for you. So thank you again for listening, and remember to follow us on Instagram at Our Greener Pastures _. And until next time, bye.